"Why do you never have friends over to the house?" my dad asked me as he stood by the grill cooking burgers in his underpants.
In my teenage years, I waged all-out war against my parents.
We're having problems. I mean, like huge problems, like drinking and driving, alcoholism. I mean, like all the things that people have, you know, like divorce, adultery. I mean, all these massive problems, like the Ten Commandments kind of problems, you know what I mean? And I remember thinking, I'm so proud of that. I'm so happy about that. That makes me feel so good.
But when cousins that are younger than you start to have brought the same significant other to multiple family gatherings, your aloneness becomes very conspicuous to everyone there.
For my mom and dad, this was their first time dealing with a teenage child, and it was a rough experience for them. I can recall at one point that I was with my mom and we were working on a school project one day. She had told me about a conversation she had with a teacher on how I was being disruptive in class. Suddenly she turned to me, hugged me, and just started crying. This was new to her. I didn't know how to react, so I just stood there. It wasn't said, but it was obvious that our dynamic had changed. The Kevin that she had known for many years was now distant and foreign. And unfortunately, it would frame the relationship between my parents and myself for the next few years.
Dad? Daddy?
We're like swimming in this amorphous pool of estrogen. And we're just grown up, you know, the male figures in our family are completely timid. And so we had two choices. I either grew up as a woman-loving, hopeless romantic, or as a woman-hating, timid guy that everybody thinks is gay.
And that's when it happened. The question that will cause complete silence in the room of any highly Catholic family. Do you have a girlfriend? Now, remember, this is not a private conversation with one of my cousins. This is in front of my entire family. Grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, parents, siblings, and everyone turned and was waiting for an answer.
And we stood there in the living room, three of us men. Myself, my father, and Santa Claus himself, just standing in the living room, where the air was thick with the smell of Christmas tree and awkwardness. My father realized somebody needed to take charge of that moment, and he broke the silence finally and said, "So, Santa, can I get you a beer?" Like, Dad?
He didn't believe in prolonging the inevitable. He prided himself on being tough. So one evening, my father called my mom, my sister, and me into the backyard. It was a warm summer evening. I remember the sun was beginning to set. My sister was there with her blankie. Because, you know, these kids, their blankie, it's their best friend. You know, they've had it their whole lives. Granted, they've had short lives, but still all the life they've ever known. So there in the backyard on the summer evening, my father dug a hole. And then he instructed my sister to throw her blankie, her best friend, into the hole. And then he covered it with dirt.
It went something like this. So, I sprained my ankle hiking in the woods, and I can't drive my car anymore. Can I borrow your van since it's an automatic? And, by the way, I shaved my head. And, by the way, I was camping with my new boyfriend. He's coming with to get the van. Thankfully, not too many questions were asked about my new hairstyle, and I was able to avoid bringing up the fact that he was technically still married.
We, you know, for all intents and purposes, had what I think was, you know, this incredible, storybook wedding, storybook engagement, storybook reception. After the 10-course meal, I go back to the room, I unbutton my pants, I get sick, and then I'm like, hey, I'm better now, and let's go dancing. So then we go, and there's a band, and we danced, and more champagne, and all that was just absolutely wonderful. I mean, the relationship and everything running up to it was just absolutely incredible. But after 8 years, my wife and I started to grow apart. And last Wednesday, we finalized our divorce.
Because I grew up, my family is Italian and Catholic, and the first wedding, I didn't get married in a Catholic church, so I fell right into all the loopholes. So it worked perfectly. I didn't have to get an annulment or anything, because in the eyes of the Catholic Church, I was never married.
And I wanted to ask them why they couldn't just accept me as I was, by myself. Why did I need someone with me to be good enough, to be presentable to them?
Eventually, I grew out of that phase and my attitude got a lot better. But those events still stay with me. In more recent years, I've gotten more into volunteering and community involvement, and I do it for a wide variety of very important reasons, but I admit that part of it is slightly grounded in this feeling of remorse, that if I can do better now, I can somehow make up for this horrible person I was as a child. I don't know if that's a good reason or a good way to feel, but it's just how I feel.
The moral of the story is, every storybook doesn't have a happy ending, but hopefully mine will in the future. I guess that's it. Thank you.